Hello and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and today I want to talk all about the lessons that I've learned training and racing 8 marathons in the span of 2019 to 2025. It's been an incredible ride so far. And, training and racing for 8 marathons can really teach you a lot. It can teach you a lot about life. It can teach you so much about yourself and how you show up when things get hard, when things are aligning, when you're feeling tired, how you kind of approach priorities. There's just so many great things that you can learn in the process of running 26.2. And let it be known that there's also so many lessons that can be known also as you're training for your first 5K, 10K, or you're leaning into the half marathons. Specifically, the marathon is its own beast. And if you haven't run or trained and run one before, it's a little bit hard to understand like why we say that. When I when I started training for my first marathon, I thought, how hard can this be? Like I I ran a half marathon pretty dang well, like a 1:39 off of 3 days of running my long run at 10 miles. How hard can training for a marathon be? Turns out it's not 2x the amount of time, the amount of effort, the amount of running. It's like 10x. It is a lot and it is fatiguing. And it feels like in some weeks, primarily around peak week, all you're doing is running and eating and maybe sleeping. Like that's what it kind of comes down to. So there's just so much that you can learn from training and racing 26.2. But I want to, talk today about some lessons that I've learned to help make you become a better marathoner. And hopefully you can learn from me and the things that I've learned along the way as I've approached 8 marathons, as I'm trying to go after running a sub 3 marathon. And, I think like it's not necessarily like grinding harder, working harder, doing more. I think I've been there, done that. I think it's really finding a lot of balance. So marathons teach you when to hold back, how to be patient, when to trust the boring work, or I call it with the athletes I coach, the beige days. Oh, you had a beige day. I'm so actually very happy to hear that because beige days are building that foundation. They are stacking the bricks. They're making the training deposit. We want a lot of beige days in training and pushing more, especially in a training cycle as you're trying to to race a PR or to have that breakthrough day. More isn't always better. And sometimes it can be in very, very small doses, but continuing to push, continuing to put yourself in this area of just where there's more risk without reward isn't always going to work. So maybe you've trained hard, you've followed plans, you've raced multiple marathons, you still kind of feel like you're circling around the same time. Hello, I have been there. This episode is for you. Anytime I have an athlete come to me and they're, disappointed maybe that they ran the same time that they did last time, or they feel like they're not making progress, it's like, well, let's evaluate what worked, what didn't work. We got to change something. But also sometimes it does come down to the day. And I have to remind those athletes that I spent 2 years of very competitive training, running over 70-mile weeks, running big workouts, running big tempos, running big long runs. And I hovered at the same marathon time 3 times over. And that was over the course of 2 years. And each one of those marathons had something a little bit different that kind of provided or why I ran the same time. And the first one was a breakthrough day. Hey, we love those days. The second one was Boston, which was just tough. And I was kind of overtrained, showed up really tired. And Boston's of course, slower than where I ran my breakthrough race at Chicago the fall before. And I was also in a corral that supported the exact same time that I ran versus the time or the shape that I was ready to race, like where I was at fitness wise. And then the third day, the third marathon, it was the same time because I went out a little too hot, or maybe I went out I probably just a touch too hot. but it was also a warm day. And so I just absolutely crumbled in the second half. But I was also taking spring energy gels during all of those races. So there's a lot there. But I have to remind athletes that anytime they they just kind of keep hovering at the same time, that I've been there. I've experienced it. I totally understand. I totally get where you're coming from. And let's celebrate the 2-3 minute marathon PRs, because I don't think social media, the running community does a good enough job of doing that. I think we all are looking like for that 10+ minute breakthrough. That's not realistic every single time you race. It's just not. I had a girl run CIM. I love her. Shout out to Dina if she's listening. And she is the prime example of the slow burn. Every single marathon she runs, she's running a 3 to 5 minute PR every single time. And she is just very quietly sneaking in to sub 3. And it's in this very beautiful way of she goes after it. She stays focused. She doesn't slow down when things get hard in the marathon. She really fights for it. And she ends up walking away with this 3 to 5 minute marathon PR, which is anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds faster per mile, which over 26.2 miles is actually a lot of time if you think about it. So today's episode isn't about hacks. It's not about shortcuts, but it is about the lessons that I've learned that can hopefully help you unlock new PRs, get that breakthrough race, maybe get that Boston qualifying performance that you are looking to have. You want to get that BQ with a buffer so you can show up to Boston and fun run or race it, depending on where you're at and what you want to do with it. So let's get into it. I want to quickly review my marathon background and timeline. So I was running on and off from 2005, until 2010. And then I took a hiatus and I got slowly back into it in 2017 and 2018. 2018 was the year I ran a 139.5 off of that 3 days of training and some Orange Theory days. I was wearing Brooks Adrenaline shoes. And I thought, hey, I think I could, run the marathon. I think I could run it really well. I think if I want to do this, I want to Boston qualify. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to hire a coach because I want them to tell me exactly what to do on how I can get this goal. It's a very underlining theme in my life. I want to do this. How do I get there? So that's what I did. So I signed up for my first marathon in 2019, CIM. That summer I was running about 30 miles as a base, which was, actually at the time I didn't realize this was a really good base. I partnered up with Nell Rojas, who I had heard on a podcast. It was the See Tolly Run podcast. And that host, Carrie Toffelson, was at a running retreat that I was at this summer. So it's like all full circle. It was the first episode I listened to. Nell had just won the Grandma's Marathon that year. And she wasn't yet, I guess it was her second marathon. So she was probably dabbling in that pro field. I think she was actually. And I thought, she sounds so cool. And she's in Boulder. I live in Denver. I think this is great. She seems like a badass too. And that's really what I was looking for. I was looking for someone who was really going to push me. Now, granted, this is 2019. I'm recording this in 2026. So that's 6.5 years ago, which is a very big difference in drive, motivation, and fatigue levels over that course of time. Mid-30s to, mid to, I guess, mid-ish 40s, very different. Anyways, I digress. Signed up for CIM. I ran 3:25. At the time, I needed 3:35 to Boston qualify. Nell said, let's get 3:33. That seemed like a realistic buffer. And then when we had our call or our check-in a few days before CIM, she's like, girl, you can run 3:18. And I was like, girl, I don't think so. So I ran 3:25 conservatively. I ran even splits. Conservatively, I mean, it still hurt in the last 10K. I had to really push and stay focused. And, the last 10K for your first marathon always hits a little bit different. But then we had the pandemic right after that. A few months later, we had the pandemic. So I got the postcard from CIM saying, hey, you're going to Boston. But I'm like, hey, I don't know when Boston actually is. So I continued to train. I continued to run. I trained with a different coach over the summer of 2020 through almost the summer of 2022. Nell's program was set up very differently back then. She had 3-month packages. And like, I don't know, my race was over, my 3-month package was over. And like, she didn't say anything about signing up again. I was like, I don't know. Should I sign up again? Maybe I just like don't. I don't know what I'm doing. So I didn't. So I worked with a different coach for a few years, and I ran Boston fall of 2021. And I am so glad I really went for it and, you know, shoot my shot like at CIM, because that was the pandemic year and the buffer that year. And at the time, this was like mind boggling. It was 7.5 minutes. And so if I would have just teetered on that 3:33, I wouldn't have gotten in. And my whole running career and probably coaching background and like what I've accomplished so far in coaching, I think would be different. Isn't that wild? Ended up going into Boston almost 2 years later. So October of 2021, it felt like my first marathon because I had only won one before, and it was 22 months before that. And it was the Boston Marathon. And I had no idea what I was doing and went out way too hot because the first part of that race is fast and then a very slow and steady decline after mile 10. I ended up gutting out a PR at 3:24. Then I said I never want to run a marathon again. And then 48 hours later, I'd sign up for my third marathon, the Mesa Marathon, just a few months later, which, woohoo, I've learned some things. That is not it, people, not it. February of 2022, I ran 3:20, warm day, above 75 at the finish. I think it was right around 60 at the start, which seems to be the type of marathons I get. And then I went into Chicago, October of 22. Nell got to coach me again. I had signed up, switched coaches, went back to her. We had a very short build because we started with 12 weeks to go. She wasn't, I think we would have started earlier if she knew how much of my really like top end speed I had lost over the 2 years that I hadn't worked with her. So we had a 12-week marathon build, which, top end speed sometimes is what you need in the marathon too, people. And I also got COVID during that cycle. So that cycle ended up being a 10-week cycle, ran a 3:15 at Chicago, and it was a negative split progression. It was by far the best race I've ever experienced. I ran out of runway. It could have been much faster if I had started out faster. But our goal for that race was to not blow up in the last 10K, which I had done the last 2 times. And that's what I did. Didn't blow up in the last 10K. Cha-ching. Moving on. Boston 2023. 6 months later, I got to train with a lot of great people. The Elevate team had there were 8 or 9 people I was coaching. I think they were all local actually too. So we had a lot of fun training. One of my really good friends, Marilee, and her husband, Billy, were also running it. So we got to train together. Marilee and I are at the same pace and same ability. We had different coaches. So it was really interesting to see how our long runs aligned or didn't align, but we made the best of it and we figured it out and joined up and linked up with each other on the Boulder back roads most weekends, trying to figure out when each of us were starting, and then based on totally different progressions, where we could meet on the course to support each other for a few miles. It was a lot of fun. I ran a 3:15 at Chicago and then a 3:17 at Boston. I then signed up for CIM December of 23 and ended up running a 3:15. So that's where this two-year cycle comes in, where I was just banging my head against the marathon door. And I had a really great lead up to CIM. I had a 5K PR in Chicago of 1925. I ran my sub 90 half at Indy 5 weeks before CIM, and I ran 88:01, and then held at the marathon 3:15. All right. Took some time away, went into a few seasons of speed, had arguably one of the best years of my life ever. Going into Indianapolis, I ran a breakthrough day, 3:08, and I felt flat. I felt like this is a B day, and I was just so happy to run the 3:08. I was so jazzed. And then I was flirting with, I don't really know what I want to do. I ultimately had signed up for Chicago at the very last hour that I could. And I got hurt last summer, and then I didn't know if I could run Chicago. And then I ended up training on a 9-week cycle, and I ran 3:07 with a very upset stomach the last 10K, where I had to slow down because I was feeling nauseous and lightheaded. It turns out it was a sodium imbalance, so that's fun. And that's where we are today. So throughout these last 6 years, I've been training, throughout the calendar year for most of it. I'm just transitioning into seasons of speed, racing, going into a new training cycle. And that's been really the last 6 years of my training. It's been wild. It's been absolutely wild. Let's get into the lessons. Lesson number 1. Fitness isn't linear, but progress is cumulative. This is huge because woo-wee, going into Chicago last fall, and I didn't just have 9 weeks of training. The first few weeks of what I would call quote unquote speed day, and I'm using quotes if you're watching on YouTube, it was 2 by 5 minutes at marathon pace and 4 by 5 minutes at marathon pace. I'm coming off of years of working with Nell and running 5-6 miles of quality most weeks. And so to do 2 by 5 minutes and 4 by 5 minutes in first 2 weeks, so now we're down to 7 weeks, I was like, I don't know if this is going to come together. And I really didn't know until 2 weeks before the race, because it ended up that it wasn't just that 9-week cycle, which I kind of knew in the back of my mind. It was the last 6-7 years of training that was helping me run really well and running really smart workouts and not overrunning. Was the injury that allowed me to rest, both from my own perspective of not wanting to rest, but also working with someone who is a driver. And I love that 90% of the time. So I got time to rest, which led to adaptations, which led to feeling a lot stronger since. And that's been really fun. So the lesson in all of it is that breakthroughs rarely show up when you expect them. They show up after the consistent work. And the consistent work for me was 6 years. Or if you look back at that CIM build, that would have been 4 years of work leading into a 5K and half marathon breakthrough day. Those were breakthrough days. I had over 30 seconds in the 5K, and this isn't a marathon build. I did not taper. I wasn't doing speed. This is in a marathon build, and I traveled. And then going into Indy, my PR at the time was 131.01. I seem to always get that 01. And I ended up running 88.01. And that was a huge breakthrough day. And that was also in the midst of a marathon build. So they rarely show up when we want them. They show up when we need them, or when we give our bodies enough rest and recovery to be able to do that. I think many runners think nothing is happening because workouts don't feel easier week to week. So in reality, I think we need to understand that adaptations stack quietly. They stack quietly. They stack when we aren't paying attention. They stack when we wake up at 5 a.m. to get in that easy effort. They stack on the days that we still show up when maybe running just feels hard, but we decide we're shifting the workout to effort and we're throwing out our ego, and we don't care that we're 15 seconds slower than what the pace progression is supposed to be. We're showing up on effort. They stack quietly in the moments that we're not highlighting and that we're not celebrating. It is in the boring work. And it's also in the rest and recovery, which is part of training, whether that's part of your weekly schedule, whether that's part of after racing, long and hard, training cycle. You race, you rest, you recover, you take enough downtime to let the adaptations occur. You show up stronger. You feel ready to go. You're not feeling like, oh gosh, I'm still running these workouts on fatigued marathon legs. Woo, that's a tough place to be. And I've been there a lot. What is the actionable takeaway from this lesson? I think the most important thing to remember is to stop chasing proof in every run. Look for progress across the entire training cycle, not just that day of workout. So that could mean at the end of your training cycle, you review all the workouts that you've done and you look at how you've stacked confidence, how you've stacked speed, how you've stacked resilience, and you use that as momentum going into your race rather than pinpointing that one day. That's the one day that matters, whether I showed up or I didn't show up. Maybe it's a great workout or not so great workout. Now, I did mention there was one workout in my Chicago build that was like the make it or break it if I was going or not. And that was solely based on, can I actually do this workout? If I can't do this workout, which was K, 9.3 miles and marathon pace, if I can't do this workout and feel the way I know I need to kind of sort of feel, I'm not going to Chicago. I'm not doing that. That's going to be a miserable day. And I don't feel like jogging. I don't feel like running it. That's a personal decision. I know everyone has a different opinion on that, but that's the way I wanted to approach that race. Stop chasing proof for every run. Take the 30,000 foot view. That's what I do as a coach. It's really fun. One day isn't going to make or break it. All right, lesson 2. Easy runs matter more than your workouts. What? How can that be? So my PRs have not come from running harder workouts. Trust me, if you've been following me on Strava for the last 3.5 years, you have seen some hardy, huge, big workouts. My friend Mary Lee calls them the big girl workouts. They have been plentiful, they have been fast, and I have raced my race in training because of it. My PRs have not come from running harder workouts. They come from being agile and coming from approaching an easier run day and showing up to workouts and running within yourself, not overrunning the intervals, not running mile effort on a K day. Let's say you have 5 by a K and you're running mile effort. What are you doing? That's just more energy. It's more intensity. You're raising the bar for getting injured. You're not creating any more fitness by doing that. And you're probably just going to show up more exhausted, more tired, and injured for next week. Focus on taking the workouts well within you, well within that 5K pace. And also take the easier days easy. My team used to call my easy days Sarah Shuffle because I was running pretty slow on those days. And I did that intentionally because one, I was fatigued, but two, I knew I had these really big workouts on Wednesday, on Saturday, and then I had a long run on Sunday, which is a lot in a given week. It's 3 days out of 7 where I had to show up and put a lot into that day. And running slow most days is going to help you be prepared to show up stronger and feel better on the workout day. You're going to get more out of the workout day. I'm not saying you get to run faster on the workout day, but maybe you stay within 5K effort and you're noticing your recovery time isn't the 2 minutes as prescribed. Maybe you're ready to go at 80 seconds or 90 seconds because you're staying within yourself. You're not pushing effort to keep the body. You want to keep the body happy and healthy, so you're not pushing the effort on easy days. We run slow to race fast. How do we know what's easy? It changes day to day, and it depends. Every runner is different. What is easy? 3 out of 10 RPE, baby. That's right. Conversational, controlled, comfortable. That means if you're running with someone, if you're singing along to a song, maybe a Taylor Swift song, maybe you're on the phone with someone, they have no idea that you are actually running. That doesn't mean you're gasping for air 90% of the way through a sentence. That doesn't mean you're gasping for air because you got through the sentence. No, that means you are running slow enough to be able to have an entire conversation. Hey, guess what? I'm recording this podcast right now and running an easy effort. Not totally, but that's kind of the idea. You want it to be easy. You want to be able to recover from your workout the day before. You want to recover from that long run. You want to show up ready to go for that workout and feel energized. Not only is this going to help your body, it's going to help your mind from burnout. 100%. Plateaued runners often train too hard on their easy days, which limits the quality on key sessions and long-term durability. which means we can't show up to our workouts, or we're pushing way too hard in our workouts and then we get injured. Or we say, Coach Sarah, I'm burnt out from training. I've been running for 12 weeks. I've been running 35-mile weeks and I'm burnt out. That's not really what should be happening. There's something going on either in your running or outside of your running, if that's how you feel. The actionable takeaway from this lesson is Easy Pace is a recovery tool. It's not a fitness test. It's not an ego test. It is something that you should protect. It's something that you should guard. If you run with people who run too fast, tell them to slow down. If you're working with a coach, I think any coach would agree, blame it on that coach. If you're not working with a coach, blame it on this podcast host and this coach. Tell them, I'm slowing down today. Are there going to be days that are a little bit faster than easy? Probably. That's normal. I think we all have days like that. But I think we really just want to be intentional with the day and win the day. Winning the day, which could mean slowing down, running slower, is going to win ultimately the training cycle, and you're going to prove yourself right on race day. It is so fun for me to see and hear reactions from people when they see me race, because I think there's maybe this perception based on my easy pace and what I'm doing that I'm not maybe as fast of a racer as some people think I am. And they're like, oh man, how are you running 9-minute miles on easy days, but then running a 6:15 effort in a 5K? I don't get that. That's what you want. You want the polarization, baby. All right, lesson 3. Long runs are about execution, not distance. What does that mean? So I'm a big believer that finishing long runs feeling strong matters more than finishing them exhausted or underfueled. So if you're noticing that you are finishing a long run feeling like you are taxed, you are gassed, you have nothing left in you, you are feeling exhausted, you feel your stomach just rumbling because you're so hungry, that is not how we win the day in the long run. Winning the day in the long run is all about proper execution. Many runners survive the long runs by never training marathon specific execution. So that could mean like fueling, pacing, that mental mindset piece to it. That's going to be part of your breakthrough in the long run. But you also, first step, need to show up and be able to execute a long run without overtaxing, over fatiguing. So what does that mean? That means sleeping really well the night before. That means eating enough carbohydrates before going into your long runs. That means carrying the darn handheld that you don't want to carry and drinking water every mile. That means maybe stopping to go to the bathroom, because that's what happens when you're drinking every mile, maybe. Maybe that means fueling up on carbohydrates during the run, and your pockets are loaded with gels, and you're also practicing running and taking a gel, and you're reminding everyone else in your crew that we're at the 3-mile mark or the 4-mile mark. It's time to take a gel. I think it's all very intentional. The last thing we want to do is put ourselves into a hole in the long run day. There's one very specific long run I remember in my Indy build where I had a 22-mile long run. It was in September. It ended up being a very warm morning. Jenna and I started early. I think we started in the dark at like 6:15 because we both just at that point in training, we were like, I think it was late September. We were like, we have just got to get through this day and get on with other things, because I think we were starting to feel like the imbalance of training and life. We also knew it was going to be a warm day. Like I think it was 80 degrees that day. And we had been training in cooler temps, and we had a 22-mile long run with 16 miles at moderate pace. What was moderate pace for that day? Well, with Nell, it changed all the time on what moderate pace was. So for that day, she wanted a 5-mile warm up. And then we did 7:20 to 7:30 pace, 7:40 pace, 7:20 to 7:40 pace. And she wanted us to stay within that 20-second window for 16 miles. And then we had a mile cool down. I think that's 22. And Let's just say we both started and we were like, I hope this feels better when we get going. I didn't bring music with me, which sometimes I did when I ran with Jenna, just kind of depending on if we separated a little bit. Or sometimes if you have one earbud in and you're listening to soft music, but then you're able to talk to the person, like that's great. And I thought we were going to be talking throughout this whole moderate effort because the other times I had run workouts similar to this, I was able to do it. Well, this day was just hard. It was hard for both of us. So I don't know if the training was hitting us both at the same time. It was one of the hardest long runs of the cycle, and we eventually finished. It was a day where the team came out. We were all running the same route. Everyone else started at 8 o'clock. So we had been well into this 2 hour and 40-minute run or whatever it ended up taking us. Everyone else crashed and burned. No one finished their long run that day but Jenna and I. And that was partially because Nell was out there telling us we had to finish. And we ended up doing it. And the moral of the story is the mile cool down back to the car, which I think we actually had a mile and a half back down to the cool down back to the car. So I think we ended up running over 22. One of our teammates, Nikki, came out and we could barely run. We both felt like we had just raced the marathon. 100%. That's how bad we felt. That is not how you want to feel. I was very, very worried that we had just run our race based on how bad that mile cool down felt. I've never experienced anything worse. The only thing very similar to that was my cool down after running the 8801 half marathon. And I think I had like a 3 mile cool down because I was in that marathon build for CIM and now wanted 20 on the day. It was similar, but it was different. And I was like, man, we may have just blown this baby because this does not feel good at all. And that's what you don't want. So you really want to make sure things are well within your reach. What happened on that day? I think pace just felt hard that day. And instead of saying we're going to run moderate effort, we ran pace and we ran within that window, and we probably shouldn't, or we should have like cut the moderate down and then just had a much longer cool down. Like 16 miles at moderate pace is a lot. So I think that that's really, really, really important. So I think it's really important to practice your race day behaviors in your long runs. Like I mentioned earlier, the sleep, the fueling beforehand, the fueling different, the timing, the steady efforts, the calm mindset. How are you going to get through it? I remember telling Jenna at one point, I was like, I can't talk to you. This feels really hard. And also, one last thing, I'm not doing strength after this. And we literally were like, let's just get through each mile. And like, we kind of took turns taking the lead and let the other person kind of do more work to get through it. It was wild. It was not good. All right, lesson 4. Marathon success is built on restraint. The lesson, every PR I've run in the past has started with discipline early, or every PR, every strong marathon that I've run has started with a more patient approach early on. The races I haven't done well, I've started out right at goal pace or slightly faster and then crashed and burned. That's not where it's at. The slow build, especially in the marathon. Oh my God, you're running a marathon. You have so much time. Let's chill out in the first 5K. Let's do a very nice, small, subtle progression. Maybe every 5K, you're getting 3 seconds faster. It's going to allow you to do a lot more in the last 10K. I firsthand have experienced that. Like my Chicago 2022, I started out a little bit slower than I wanted to, but I ended up running a 6:10 mile at the end of the race because I just had so much gas left. I had so much energy. I was ready to go. Chicago 2025, I was ready to lay the hammer down in the last 10K. I was so excited. My legs had felt the best they had ever felt in a marathon. My breathing was like non-existent. I had done this half turn, both hands up in the air to cheer on one of my teammates' husbands who was standing out there at mile 18 and a half. I felt great. I was ready. I was like holding back running 650. I was like, you got to hold back. You got to hold back because you still have that point. It's like you got 8 miles left. Like wait until you get to 20. And then everything kind of flip-flopped on me. So every PR I've run for sure has come with discipline and patience early. So how can you set yourself up for success in training by mimicking that? You can do that in workout reps, starting your first rep a little bit slower, working your way into it. You could do that in easy effort by starting the first few miles a little bit slower and then getting into what you need to run or what feels like a 3 out of 10 for the day. You can do that in the long run by taking the first few miles slow and then getting into your long run effort. You can do that in terms of how you train marathon pace. So, one workout I love, and I got this from a coach who I really respect. I respect his coaching. It's 3 by 3 miles at marathon pace. And you start out with a really long warm up, like 8, 10 miles. Then you do 3 on, 1 easy, 3 times over. And oftentimes I will set those athletes up for success by, let's start out at current marathon effort. What is your current PR in the marathon? Second interval is possibly what we've been training, which is going to be pretty close to tranche or interval 3. Where are we landing right now? What seems to be, that could be like 5 seconds faster. And then the third interval is goal race pace. What is your goal marathon pace that you want to run? And that's a fantastic way to not only get 9 miles of quality in on tired legs at the end of a long run, but it also demonstrates patience. It demonstrates that you have the ability to control pace. You're not overrunning. You're not overshooting early and then blowing up. It's like one of the best long runs for so many different reasons. It just highlights all these different skill sets that we need to have as runners. If you can train your ego to be okay with a slower first half of the marathon, where you feel comfortable, you feel good, you feel ready to go at the halfway point, woohoo, you are going to fly in the second half and it's going to feel good. Is it going to get hard? Yes, because it's the marathon, but you will feel good and you're going to be able to do more in the second half of the marathon than you can in the first if you go out too fast. The marathon is lost or won by the first 5K and the last 5K. If you go out too fast in the first 5K, chances are it's going to be really, really hard to produce a solid and strong 26.2. And I'm not talking about falling off the last 10K by like 10-ish seconds per mile. I'm talking about when you start losing minutes per mile. All of a sudden, that buffer that you created early on is lost and then some. I've been there. Lesson 5, fatigue is information. Try not to freak out. Overly fatigued or feeling overly fatigued can be alarming, I think, for a lot of runners, or they just don't know what they don't know. So in episode 83, which is like, woo, back in the archives, I talk about what's normal, what's not normal in training. One of the things that I talk about is fatigue and what's normal when it comes to fatigue, because fatigue is part of training for the marathon. It has to be part of the marathon. Otherwise, we're not fatiguing enough to be able to build those muscles back strong and be in like total beast mode for race day. So fatigue is part of it, but you don't want to over fatigue. If you over fatigue, you could be overtraining, under fueling, under sleeping. It's not productive fatigue. It is red flag fatigue. And we don't want red flag fatigue. We want productive fatigue. We want to be able to take a recovery week, to take that rest day, to go into taper and be like, yeah, I am tired. And then you come through that feeling stronger and feeling better. I took my first rest day yesterday. It had been a minute, so I'm not really following a structured plan right now. I'm just having a lot of fun and also running some workouts and not just being hyper focused on my training, which I think is really good for me. And yesterday it had snowed in Boulder and it was also icy. And I thought, okay, I have a lot that I want to get done. I have the potential to see a friend and walk with her and have our dogs run together later in the day. It was still up in the air because I told her it was kind of based on how much incoming stuff I had. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit down and start working. This was like 6:30 in the morning, which is, I think, maybe wild for some people to hear. But I was so hyper focused all the way through like 1 o'clock. And then I was like, it's 1 o'clock. I'm still in my pajamas. I haven't run yet today. I would like to see my friend. She just came back from a trip. I'd love to hear about her trip. I'd love to connect with her. I'd love for Kenzie to be able to run with her dog. I don't think I should run today. And also, I don't remember the last time I took a rest day. So I looked back and I was like, oh, yeah, it was like 3 weeks ago. I'm definitely taking a rest day. Showed up today, ran a workout, and it was great. My body felt so good, probably the strongest it's felt in a long time. And, rest days really do have their place. I wouldn't recommend not taking a rest day every 3 weeks. It's something I need to be more intentional about as I do start to ramp up more quality and longer quality. I haven't really been doing a lot of quality, so it's just been more easier miles with hills. So I have felt very healthy and strong in that process. So I'm not too concerned about it. But you want to make sure that you are recovering. And recovery, maybe it's that extra rest day in training. Maybe you take 1 rest day a week. Now you're going to take 2 this week because you're just showing up tired. Or you run a really windy long run with quality in it. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to take tomorrow off because I'm just feeling like, even though I tried to stay on effort and I didn't hit pace because I was running into a lot of headwind, I still put a lot of effort into this. And I need to take that extra rest day. Rest day is part of training. It is part of it, for sure. So learning the difference between productive fatigue and red flag fatigue is one of the skill sets that takes runners a long time to figure out, I think, in my opinion, but it is something that we eventually figure out, usually through experience or by having excellent communication skills and communicating certain things to a coach, which would be like a red flag for us to be like, oh, that's not right. That is not right. Lesson number 6 is fueling is a performance skill, not a bonus. We are not fueling when we want to. We're not fueling when we feel like it. We are fueling with intention. I mentioned earlier on in this podcast that the majority of the marathons that I have run have been using Spring Energy gels. So I used Honey Stinger gels. I think I took 3 in my first marathon. I am not proud of that. And I will say I was very dehydrated and beat up after that race, but it was also my first marathon. But anyways, I used Spring Energy gels from marathon number 2 all the way through marathon number 6. So Indianapolis and Chicago, my last 2 marathons, I was using SIS Beta and then SIS Beta with electrolytes. And I have to laugh because I'm pretty sure that's what created the nausea and everything else that was going on course at Chicago. I've learned over the years that more is better when it comes to eating and training your stomach and taking in more carbs. And I was so proud of myself in the Chicago build because I still was able to manage 5 20-mile long runs, and knock on wood, I don't even know how I got through that like healthy, but I was able to do that. 3 of them were at easy effort, or I'd push the pace at the end of the long run just to kind of see like how can you run strong for the last few miles? What kind of pace does that come in at? And then I kind of dabbled in the third 20-mile run at 2x1 mile at goal pace. And then my last 2 with Nell, they were more significant for sure. And I was so proud of myself because there were a few long runs, actually all of those long runs, where I had tracked and I took in 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour for those runs. And I was so proud of myself. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is like maybe the only build that I've done that. I think Indy was pretty close, but I was still trying to navigate taking in that much because if you remember from Spring Energy, they claimed that the gel had 160 calories and 40 grams of carbohydrates, but it ultimately ended up being like 70 calories and like 13 grams of carbohydrates. Very, very, very different. 13, 18, something like that. It was under 20. So for Indy, I mean, I was going from 0 to 180. So I don't think I was taking in quite 80 grams per hour because I was just trying to get my stomach aligned and not blow up during a race or during a long run. So I think many runners plateau because they're underfueling workouts, they're underfueling long runs, they're underfueling how they show up after these efforts, which are also very important. Your recovery and how fast your recovery is the gap between when you stop your watch on these workouts and long runs and how quickly you're taking in fuel. I've talked about how I have a protein shake with me at all times. FYI, the Feed protein mix, amazing. It's so good. Both the vanilla, which I'm not usually a vanilla person, like a vanilla protein shake, like sometimes can taste really chalky. Not this way. The chocolate is phenomenal. I think it's like $33 for 20 servings, free shipping. Get it. They're not promoting. They should. It's amazing. So I usually have that. I've been using that right now. And then also having some sort of quick carbohydrate. So it could be like gluten-free pumpkin bread. It could be getting a breakfast sandwich from Spruce Confections. It could be having an RX bar and an orange in my car, like a sumo orange, something like that. I'm always refueling in the car driving home. Like that is like part of what I do, because I've just noticed that it just helps me feel a lot better going into the next day. And I think we all want to feel that way. So fuel early, fuel consistently, and practice it. Because if you don't practice it in training, it's going to be so hard on race day to be able to execute that if you haven't been practicing it, right? How we show up in training is how we show up on race day. And if we haven't practiced it, we're not going to know what to do, because our brain's going to be in every which way area thinking about all the different things going on the race day, especially if you're running a major. There's just a lot going on, and there's a little bit of anxiety. There's a lot of excitement. You're not really sure how things are going to show, how you're going to show up and how you're going to do. So like, let's try and make everything as easy as possible. And this is one of the things that we can make as like super easy and super possible to just like be in rhythm and in sync with. One tip I really like that I really advise a lot of my athletes to do is, and this is something I did at Chicago, was instead of like trying to track, when am I taking a gel? Oh my God, I forgot I took a gel. Oh my God, it's been 5 miles. I haven't taken a gel. Is most marathons have a timing mat that you very clearly run over every 5K. Why not practice in training what that 5K is going to be? Is it going to be like 22 minutes? 22:15 for like a 3:05 3 marathoner? Is it going to be 23 minutes? Is it going to be 25 minutes? Practice that in training. And then when you get to race day, every time you run over a timing mat, it's gel time. So fun. All my friends and family who are tracking me, they get a gift, they get my pacing splits for the last 5K. I'm giving myself a gift. I'm taking in a gel. It's a great, great way to stay on track, to not have to overthink, and to just get it done. Second to last lesson. Lesson 7 is confidence comes from repetition, motivation. Unfortunately, confidence on race day comes from showing up on the days we don't want to, on the beige days, on the average days, on the meh days, not the hypey days. The hypey days are fun. They are so fun. I love hype days. They're so fun. You're like, oh my God, I felt so good. I crushed that workout. I ran well within myself and it just felt so smooth. We love those days. But if you can show up on the days that are average and the days that are hard, that hands down should give you more confidence than the hype days. In my Chicago build, over the summer fall, I didn't have a lot of hype days. The only day I can remember is 2 weeks out from the race when I ran the 5K, and I was like, heck yes, I absolutely crushed this. I averaged 6:58 on the 5K. I had a lot of energy left. I felt really, really good. And I was on track at that same pace until mile 20 when my stomach went. So it's very interesting. Like all the confidence came from my average days, came from the 5 by a mile, came from the workouts that seemed like baby workouts in comparison to what I was running before that. It came on the days when I didn't want to get out of bed, on the days that I didn't want to lace up my shoes, on the days when I was on runs crying. That's where the confidence came in, because I knew that if I can get through those days, I can absolutely get through the marathon feeling fit, feeling ready. So runners chase PRs. They're often looking for that confidence externally, right? Through the numbers. I think a lot of us can agree with that. We want to see like the right numbers on every single day of the training cycle. Confidence is actually built in through controlled execution. A workout I ran today was a controlled execution. I wrote myself a 2x1K at threshold, 4x4 minutes at 5K less 10 seconds. So 5K effort. So I used my Houston race at 6:15 average, less 10 seconds. So I wanted to be between 6:05 and 6:15. 90 seconds to 2 minutes recovery, kind of based on how I was feeling when I was ready to go again. And then I did 4x1 minute fast at mile effort with 90 seconds of recovery between those efforts. It was strong. It was controlled. I was focused. Every single time I went into a rep, I literally said out loud, and there were groups of runners around me. I said, "You can do this," without laughing. I said, "You can do this." And it wasn't necessarily that it felt hard, but I wanted to start that mindset shift. I wanted to start that language. I wanted to start that conversation of, yes, you can. You are proving yourself right. You can do this. I believe in you. And so I was literally saying it out loud today, and I crushed it. I felt so good. I felt so strong. It was definitely a hype day, but there was also that controlled execution that went into it, right? I didn't overrun the paces. I could have. I felt great. I could have overrun it, but I am stronger for not doing that. I'm stronger going into tomorrow. I'm stronger going into what could potentially be my second workout / long run of the week this week. I'm stronger for it. It was controlled execution. So could it have been fun to see like, oh, I PR'd the lap at 5:50 average? Of course. Would that have been so cool to see on Strava? Maybe. But instead, I stayed very controlled. I stayed well within myself. I repeated the basics well, the foundational pieces to a workout. Those basics can be applied to easy days, can be applied to long runs, can be applied to the training week, the training block, the training cycle. The boring consistency should build the unshakable confidence because, like I said earlier in this podcast, it is the consistency, the long-term consistency that is going to make you great. We know that running is the long game. Are we seeing people progress really quickly in this sport? Yes. I think they're going to plateau early. I do. And I think they're going to have a really tough, like, let's say the span is 10 years of term endurance racing. I think the second half, or maybe even 75% of that, is going to be really tough. It's just going to be really tough. Be the slow burn. Knock off 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 7 minutes each marathon. See what happens. I guarantee you're going to be engaged longer for that. And it's by staying true to yourself, staying true to the workouts, the long runs, the training, and really leaning into the boring consistency because it's going to build your unshakable confidence. You're going to be able to produce more over the 10 years than someone that burns out, that lights quickly and burns out quickly. Same amount of time, right? We talk about that in relationships, right? Like if there's like a really fast, bright spark, usually within a few months, it just burns out. But in other relationships, it could be a really slow build. And those relationships can withstand the test of time. That's kind of what you want to do with your running. Lesson 8, the breakthrough often comes when you stop forcing it. This is very true. My best marathons have happened when I've trusted the process instead of trying to prove something. When I've trusted all the things that I've done to get there, when I've trusted myself, when I've leaned into, okay, we do have a race plan, but how am I actually feeling today? I'm never going to overrun the race plan to start, but do I actually have to start out a little bit slower? Or do I want to start at the race plan? I think plateaued runners grip way too tightly to the outcome goal, and that can create a lot of anxiety and poor decision making because we just want to do everything that we can do to get that BQ or to get that sub 345 in the marathon or that sub 330 or that sub 3, sub 4, whatever it is. We want to do everything that we want to do to be able to get that. And so we make bad decisions based on that. Poor decisions. I've been there. I've done some things where I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? It's like the ego takes over. You think you're invincible, and then something happens. Even over the summer, training through a foot that felt like garbage for a month, and being so dissociated with my body and like and in denial that anything was happening, and I didn't want to stop and I didn't want to take time to get it treated. It was a bad decision over and over and over again. It did lead to a lot of anxiety. I was not my best self in those months where I felt bad. I think anytime we don't feel good in running, I mean, that can seep into just how we are day to day, right? We know something's wrong. Maybe we're not admitting it or acknowledging it. It's a poor decision, poor judgment. And then you have to own it. Whatever happens after that, right? I just listened to a podcast today on Rich Roll it was with Brad. It was with Brad Schulzberg, and I'm probably totally mispronouncing his last name, but it was phenomenal. And it was released on, I believe, January 19th. And he talked a lot about life and being our best and how it can show up in marathons and in athletics. And he had such a strong message about how it's okay to have outcome goals. Cause like as humans, I think we do need to have that to some extent, but how we also really need to have stronger process goals that we lean into and how important that is to really get the most out of ourselves. The entire podcast, I think it's 2.5 hours long, is phenomenal. I listened to it on 1.2 speed, and I listened to those types of podcasts in like chunks so I can get through it in like 2 days. So it might be like driving 15 to 20 minutes to see my friend and walk with her and have our dogs play together. Oh, cool. That's like 30 to 40-ish minutes of real time podcast listening just there. Today I listened to it driving to my workout and back. That's another 30 minutes. Like it does add up, like time like that. So incredible podcast. Highly, highly, highly recommend listening to it. I think your actionable takeaway when it comes to the breakthrough and how it happens when you're not forcing it is to chase the process goals in training first. It's okay to have that outcome goal. I still have my sub 3 outcome goal. I think if anything, I'm more fired up about that now. After Houston weekend was so motivating, racing again felt really good. And running a workout last week with a friend, and she's been running with me for a while, like 3.5 years. And she turned to me and she was like, you are running so strong. Like you just look so different. You just look like you're running the best you've ever run. And I think that has helped me get really motivated, right? So that came from action. Action creates motivation. Action creates mood. We get excited from doing. So I think being able to do that is really important. Chasing your process goals, making sure the process goals are aligned with your outcome and what you really need to do rather than like maybe the easy process goal versus like the process goal that we really should do. That's probably really hard to do because we're not doing it, right? The time will come. I'm a big believer that if you can fall in love with the process, the outcome will happen. Easier said than done because I don't always do that in my own training, but I do coach about that. If this episode resonated with you, I hope you take a moment to reflect on where you might be forcing progress instead of just letting it be, letting it compound. Breaking through a marathon plateau isn't just about finding, a missing workout. It's about aligning with your training, with your recovery, with your execution, with where you actually are right now and where you want to go. So if you're someone who runs multiple marathons, you have big goals on the horizon, you're chasing big dreams, and you want more personalized guidance to unlock your next level, break through that plateau, let's do it. I do work with a small number of athletes in a higher tier coaching capacity each season. That higher tier is the highest tier. And I do have a few spots open in that highest tier where we not only, it's called the performance coaching package. It's not just getting a personalized plan, coaching feedback. It is super intentional. There's emotional regulation that's part of it. There is emotional support that goes with it. And I think it's one of the best packages, one of the best coaching outlets that you can find out there, because not only do you get everything that you need, I really do care. And I love seeing people break through and find this beautiful balance between process and outcome and feeling confident and feeling ready to go. You don't need to train harder. You just need clarity, confidence, a coach, and a plan that respects all the work you've already done, but also knows what it's going to take to get you to where you're going. And that might not mean more. That might mean shifting and pivoting and doing something a little bit different. So you can learn more at elevateyourrunning.com. You can reach out to me directly if you want to over email at Sarah, SARA, at elevateyourrunning.com. Thank you so much for listening this week. This was a fun one. I'm super excited about it. I'm pretty sure we have some guests coming up, which are really fun guests. Some runners who have been running some really strong races postpartum, some runners who are shifting their training and going after some big Boston goals, and a few other people that are going to be really, really exciting. So I'm excited to be here in 2026. Thank you so much for listening. Share this podcast episode if it resonated with you. Reach out if you have any questions, and cheers to a strong year ahead.